With that, I'd like to call up our speakers. We have Atul Tandon, CEO of Opportunity International, Surita Sandosham, the CEO of Heifer International, and Jen Butte-Dahl is our very, very capable moderator from APCO. So we're just going to jump into this session. Go ahead.
How's this sound? Good?
All right. Here we go. Am I on? Yeah? Kristen, I know we're running behind. I want to make sure, because I'm setting my timer, we still have 40 minutes, right? Okay, good. We're going. All right. Hi, everyone. How is everyone feeling? Afternoon, sun's going down, energy levels, good? Good. All right, I'm going to have some audience engagement, so stay tuned. First, I'm going to start and just say it's such an honor to be up here with you two, brilliant people. I think this is going to be an awesome panel. It's always an honor to help guide a conversation, and the conversation today feels important. This work is heavy, and the next 40 minutes is going to be about co-creation. Our goal is really to dig into the details, to bring out some models, some examples, give people ideas that they can take back and execute within their own organizations. But before we get too much into the content, I want to give a shout out to Global Washington just for the flow of the agenda. Transforming philanthropy is not a small feat. There's a lot that's involved in that, and I've been super impressed with how the agenda has flowed and that each session seems to build on the next. So often you go to conferences, and I know there's a lot of conference attendees here, where you're in one session and you're talking about something, specific, and then you're in another session, you're totally in a different place, and you come to the end of the day and you're like, I'm not really sure what I learned. And I'm really feeling like I'm building on that learning over the day. Anyone else feeling that? Let's give a round of applause for anyone who's feeling that. Awesome. So transforming philanthropy, it's a big lift. And I think what's been clear from the sessions today is it's multi-layered, right? We're talking about transforming structures and roles and mindsets and leadership styles and systems and processes. And I think if we want to really effectively act on the buzzwords we love to throw around, we need to get really specific about what we mean. And co-creation is one of those buzzwords. So we're going to try to dig into it for the next 40 minutes. Or actually 37 now, I'm keeping track. So I'm going to ask both Atul and Surita, and maybe I'll start with Surita. What does co-creation mean to you and your organization? And are there important criteria or principles in place for it to, work effectively?
So first, thank you for inviting me onto the stage. And just to let everybody know, I'm the CEO of Heifer International, which is an organization that focuses on hunger and poverty and caring for the earth, which in itself is a very complex situation to address. And we've not done it, and we've been at it for 80 years. And so that kind of complexity requires a methodology, a way of being in terms of co-creating together with the stakeholders who are part of the solution, part of the problem and part of the solution. And so for us, it is critical to be able to work with our funders, to co-create together, to align around what our mission is, what is the strategy that we're trying to work towards, and also to align around our values. And it is part and parcel of the way the organization has been working. And we have success stories, but we also have challenges. And I want to give a shout out, I guess, to Kristen. She actually defined co-creation today to talk about the issues of equity and diversity. It's about bringing all of the different voices. And it is a way, it's a mindset, and it's a way of being, and it's a methodology that we think is critical if we want to have the kind of impact that we want to see with smallholder farmer families eventually getting to a sustainable living income. That's our goal, is to get 10 million families to get to a sustainable living income. And by that definition, it allows them to have sufficient income to, educate their kids, put food on the table, provide health.
Amazing, I love that. Mission, values, mindset, methodology, Atul.
Thank you. Before I say anything, shout out to the fast pitch. And I'm currently split between Paul S&E, who works with us at Opportunity, but I'm eyeing that beautiful bag over there. So, I have to figure out my vote, so you can buy it. Yeah. So, I think more seriously to your question on co-creation, and I'll try and be direct in that. To us, it definitely starts with the vision and mission. Okay, who are we and what are we about? And that has to be unequivocal and clear. But the second part of co-creation starts really at the other end with the client. Paul showed you a photograph of Faustina. It starts with Faustina first, is her needs. How do we really think about human-centered, client-centric design? And that is the end of the thread, if you will, from which co-creation starts. So you have got the two ends, which is the client, if you will, the beneficiary on the one side, and in our case, opportunity on the other. And what are, so our values, of course, from the day we started have been: we give a hand out, we don't give a hand out. We give a hand up, we don't give a hand out. That we believe that the way out of poverty is helping our clients build sustainable livelihoods. And the best way to do it is to put the means of economic production in their hands, which means they need financial resources and they need training and support. So our first client, literally sitting on the streets of Cali, Colombia, 1971, Carlos Moreno, selling raw spices. Our founder, Al Whitaker, shows up there and sees him. And I think for us, co-creation starts in that first dialogue, which fortunately for us was recorded, is Al wanted to ask Carlos, this question was, okay, what do you need to do better in life? How do you earn more income? And that first question to our first client, his response was, I need a spice grinder. I need a more advanced form of producing spices so I can earn more by selling refined spices. So from that, if you draw down back to the principles of co-creation, it's the needs of the clients. And then finding, if you will, both our assets and ourselves, how to connect with the client, but importantly, how to find local actors and players who can provide the services and the needs. So whether it's a local bank, whether it's a local nonprofit that's providing capacity building and skilling, whether it's a local support group for Carlos to work with. And then how do we bring all these parties together? So co-creation does, by definition, involve all those parties. It's not only the funder and the operating NGO and the client, it is the local partners. And the complexity really is, and we'll probably get into it, is, okay, how do you bring all these people? How do you identify them? How do you bring them together? And what guides the whole process?
I want to dig into the how in our next set of questions, because I think it's really important. We talk about co-creation a lot, but I think a lot of people have very different ideas of what we mean by that. So we'll get into that. But first I want to ask, show of hands, how many people have been engaged in a co-creation process in their work? Raise your hand.
Wow, look at that.
Keep it up if it went well. Yeah. Okay, so we lost maybe a third. I think that's the challenge, right? Co-creation, it's a journey. We don't get it right on the first time. It's an intricate process to get it right and make sure you're hitting all those boxes. And we need to keep moving. So I'm going to throw it back to Atul to go into the next question, which is really to get into a model. So tell us about your partnership with the Visa Foundation and what co-creation looks like in that specific context.
Yeah, thanks. So we started with Visa about 3 years, right in the middle of the pandemic. And goes back to mission alignment, first of all. Of course, our mission on helping our clients build sustainable livelihoods. Visa had an objective of helping women SMEs, specifically in Africa, build sustainable livelihoods. They are a financial services company. Our roots are in financial services, so that aligned. Okay, well, here is our mutual alignment in terms of our objectives, and that's where co-creation for us started. And then we went through with Visa a process of, okay, who are the target clients we should choose? Right? Where should they be? How do we approach those target clients? What are the outcomes you're looking for? So as we went into those early conversations, and this process took a while, it wasn't a one meeting or a two meeting process. This process took a while, is to say who are, and for us, our target clients were extremely poor, people who are living below $2 a day. For Visa, the target clients were the working poor, who are already in the economic production marketplace. So we had to convince Visa to actually approach a new client base. And then we spoke about the countries. There, it's interesting is that our understanding was if this is going to be successful, we will need, by necessity, local bank partners who buy into what our theory of change is and who would be willing to work with Visa. So that led to a series of discussions, which eventually led to 3 countries, Ghana, Uganda, and Nigeria. And then came the question of what the best designs were in terms of delivering solutions. Well, you're going to bring these ladies into a cohort training group. You're going to equip them with financial services. Most obvious response is, or give them a loan. Well, Atul, give them a loan. We said, we're not going to give a loan, but let's bring local partners in, local banks in, and let's talk to them about giving loans. And this is where the messy part of the co-creation comes in, is that local banks wanted credit support. We're not going to give loans to extremely poor ladies. We have never done that before. This is a new target market. What have you got for us, right? So Visa's looking to us, what do? I mean, we are the NGO. We know the client. We know the partner. We saw the funders. They have a vision and a mission, and they want to accomplish it. And this is where we then came up with introduced a solution, which this is where the co-creation Visa immediately liked, and I'll tell you what the solution is, because they understood the power of what we do, which is multiplying capital. So we are not going to give the loans. The banks are going to give the loans, but you, Visa, your funding is going to provide guarantees to the banks. So right away, first loss guarantee for those of you who understand bank, they're picking up I think the first 10% of the losses, which essentially means for every $100,000 of funding they provide, $1 million of loans could be given out, 10 times more, right? Because the bank now has 10% support. So that kind of messiness only happened when you sit down with the client, with the bank partner, with Visa, and with Simona Hajduk, who's sitting here in the room together, right? And so that's part of how it works. And then we ended up with clarifying objectives and outcomes, and then means of delivery. Okay, is it in person? Well, it can only be partly in person. If you want many people, then you have to introduce technology. What kind of technology? Are you going to use a Visa AI tool? Are you going to use a different tool? And those kind of conversations happen. So I'll leave it at that, is that I will say one thing, though, and importantly, and I did point out to Simona intentionally, is that the role of, as we understood our role, the role of the nonprofit opportunity. And if you think about what we're wanting to do here is on the funder on the one hand, the client on the other hand, right? That's like a baton. I think of our work as a baton. Simona's role specifically, and she works for us and she's at the head of our partnership development, was to be the baton carrier. Right now the baton is with Visa. They've got a set of questions to answer. How do we answer it? It needs to pass to the partner. Then it needs to go to the client. Then it needs to go back. So our role really was that baton carrier, the cementing glue, and the framework provider who had the end objective in mind. And ultimately, we held accountable to the objective.
So let me get a little more detail. So in those conversations, as you're carrying the baton, is that a workshop? Are people together in a boardroom? Is this by email that you're kind of the intermediary? Like, how is the process actually working?
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above and all at the same time.
So you get people together at the beginning.
That is correct.
Then you're doing a set of conversations, emails, trying to figure out your way through the mess. Then you pull people together again. Then there's more mess. Then
everything at once and all at the same time.
There's a movie about that, isn't there?
That is, and there's a book by Bill Nye. Used to go read, a wonderful book. But I intentionally say that because you really have to be, you want to get used to extreme pain to try and do this. And I really mean that, seriously. Anyone who's done successful co-creation would agree with me. It's a painful process, but at the same time, it's an extremely nerdy process. So, you have to use all of your intellectual and abilities, and as well as for us as an organization, what we definitely do want to encourage is deep listening skills. You have to have deep listening skills. Personally, for me, I believe that all of us in this room are successful at our jobs because we have deep empathy, not only for our clients, but for our staff, our partners, for each other. And I think that's what drives, much of the motivation that comes for our work. So deep listening and deep empathy, and at the same time, a absolute passionate focus on, okay, we have to do the right thing by the client and get the right results. We will not stop till we figure that out. And how do you create that bond of within that group, not just in the willingness, but the passion to go for that goal. Let's find solutions that work ultimately for the client. If you drive that, then I think you get to the results.
Yeah. Okay, Surita. Nice balance of funders here. Now we're going to move from Visa to MasterCard. Surita, can you tell us about your partnership with the MasterCard Foundation and how the process worked in your context?
Yeah. So we've had a relationship with MasterCard for a long time, at least 10 years. And I think one of the things about our engagement with a funder like MasterCard is we think it has to be for the long haul. And we care about the same issues. So in the case of MasterCard, I think we began in 2013 when MasterCard was in Toronto. They were thinking about youth. We were thinking about youth as a constituency in our smallholder farmer families. We hadn't quite figured out what to do, so we approached them, and we got rejected a couple of times. But we didn't give up because we knew that they were interested in working with youth in Africa, and so were we. And so we kept this ongoing conversation. And we had our Simona, who was building this relationship with the MasterCard. And through that relationship, and it is ultimately, co-creation is about relationship building. It's about managing that. It's about understanding what's going on in the context of where you want to be. And it's about constantly having a conversation and not letting no be the thing, right, that causes you to turn back and not come back, to actually say, well, can we align around something? And we had this amazing grant from the Gates Foundation working in East Africa on dairy. And they knew about this, and they liked the model. And then they approached us again, and they said, look, why don't we partner? We'll do something in East Africa. So we worked on 2 countries, Uganda and Tanzania. And it was working with 25,000 youth. And it was a 5-year project that went to 2022. And the learning from that gave us insight into the current project. And I'll just say what the learning was. We had this project. It was happening during COVID. We did do a learning conference with them and ourselves, because even though we ticked all of the right things in terms of the deliverables, we reached the 25,000 youth, we were not focusing on women. We did not focus on young girls. We thought we should provide a revolving fund because they didn't want to provide a revolving fund to the youth. We said we'll do it with our own money. And we did it with a bank. And what we learned in the 5 years was that it actually was very difficult for the young people to get to the bank because it was too far away. So, we learned some things. And in that learning, we also learned with MasterCard about what we didn't know and what they didn't know. And at this stage, they were moving to Africa. They moved all of their offices to Rwanda. So it became very locally led in terms of their approach, and they were present in the continent. And the result of that was we shifted our relationship from, our donor relationship in the US to our team in country. And that created the space to actually learn more about what was going on. And one of the other things in that initial grant was they did a trip to the countries so that they could speak with our constituents. Anyway, right now, we just got a $47 million grant from MasterCard. And it's for Uganda. It's for 250,000 youth. 70% of them are going to be young women. And it's based on the learning that we did in Uganda and Tanzania. And I would say that Atul talked about deep listening, really important. I think it's really important to say what you don't know. I think the other piece in all of this, because we are talking about a funder, is that they have relationships with others, and they have also knowledge. And we don't have, we know what we know in terms of value chains. We know what we know in terms of supporting smallholder farmers to get to a market, figuring out how to help the youth with mentoring. But there are some other things that we don't know. And it was great to have them tell us who and we might want to partner with on the ground. And so we essentially co-created the grant proposal, and it didn't happen overnight, didn't happen in 3 months. It happened over 7 months. They didn't like the concept note, came back again, we redid it. And so there's this, it's a very symbiotic relationship. So, what I'm learning and what I've learned from our staff is that you don't give up. You be candid and honest, and you recognize, right, that the funder is in it with you as a partner. They care about the deliverables as well. And the smallholder farmer or the youth, right, are also part of this. And we weren't just looking to just get the money. We were also looking to say, right, we have a larger vision for the continent. It's focused on youth, 75% are, 35 and under. This is what we're going to be doing. So partner with us, learn with us, we learn from you, and then we'll get to the impact that we need to get to.
That's great, and I'm going to ask a different follow-up for you. I mean, both you and Atul have talked about it's not just you and the donor, right? It's you, the donor, and your client. And I want to talk a little bit about that power dynamic as you think about all three parties. So in your context, the youth, what was their role in the co-creation process? I learned when we were in whoever was in the leadership session today, you heard a very interesting analysis about how to think about power in 3 ways, right? There's the agenda setting power, there's the ideological power, and there's the decision-making power. And so, when we think along these lines, how do you think about the client and how they engage, and what are some best practices and challenges, too, that we face when we're trying to balance between ourselves and our donor partner, but then also the client we're trying to serve, and making sure that everyone feels that they've got equity in this and some agency?
So from our perspective, I think it's being really clear about the expectations of what you're trying to get out of the deliverable, right, that you care about. What's the impact? And so with MasterCard, it was really important for them to be on a site visit with us. And that site visit isn't us doing a show and tell. It's, actually going to meet the community and talk to them so that they can learn from the interaction themselves. They can also see our staff interacting with them. And it's not a 1 hour thing, it's 3 days, and they have to make the time and effort. And actually, it's really worth it at the end of the day, because it will then seal whatever the deliverable is, right? The final contract and the final grant, because you will have in your mind, not only from the donor perspective, but from our perspective, the people that we're talking about, the youth that we're talking about. So that was really important. So they came to Uganda and Tanzania before we got this proposal. And now that we have this proposal, there's also 6 months in which we are co-creating what the final deliverables will be for the next 5 years. That will require engaging with community. I think you just, for us, I know that there's an imbalance because of the money, but I think you need to say, right, the money isn't everything, because at the end of the day, it's how are we bringing all the partners together, plus the youth, right? How are we making this a success, and how are we doing it together? And I think being honest about that And MasterCard has been very open, and we have 10 years is a long time, right, to build this relationship. If we can't say the things we need to say, then, it's not a great relationship, and it's a co-creation that's gone south. I think that co-creation is never easy, it's not linear, and it's difficult and it's unique to every single thing that you do. So it's not like we can just tick the box, co-creation, zip. Different people, different partners, different mindsets. You have to work at it. And after a while, it gets to be fun because you kind of know people, right? We're all pretty much the same, We want the same things. And if we can see ourselves in each other, and we can see ourselves in the youth that we're working with, I just think it makes it that much easier. I've only been on the job for a year, so I'm telling you stuff that my colleagues have told me, and I'm so impressed because they've been at the job for like 10 years, and they're doing such a great job. So.
Amazing. Atul, do you want to chime in?
Sure, and I'll come back to the power dynamics, but I do want to strongly endorse what you just said, is that each co-creation, that we do looks different than the other. There is no two that are similar. And the metaphor that comes to my mind is when we go to buy a car, if you will, 80% of the car is standard, right? You can do 20%. You can choose the color. You can choose what the dashboard looks like. You can choose whether you have heating, whether you have seats, and things like that. You can't change the design. Co-creation does feel like you are designing the new car. It does feel like, and if you keep that in mind, that's what is, it's a very, very messy process. But then all of the partners, and I'll come to the power dynamics, have to trust each other. And I think you mentioned that, Surita, is that deep trust, open communication, flexibility, iterative processes, you have to really commit to that. And I think for us, the non-negotiables really do start right at the beginning. And then you fill in the blanks, which is one, what is our mission and motive, if you will, and what is it that we want as an NGO partner, and then similarly for the funder. If you can set those two things as the bookends, now let's talk about, then you flip to the human-centered design. And there we have to then intentionally work towards where the power dynamics really do shift to where we are listening more to the client than to anybody else. Now, for us, there are not 3, but by our design, at least 4 partners, because we would have local financial services partners. Increasingly, there are 5. Is that what we are finding is that in addition to working with, like in the case of the women entrepreneurs we work with, let's find the best women entrepreneurs. If they're working with farmers, let's find the best farmers, the model farmers. And let's bring them into the exercise because they are the local people, and Alicia earlier used the word hyper-local. They are the local people who understand how to work on the solutions we all want the best. And let them be the instructors and the teachers of our clients. So we also are starting to bring the master trainers from the local workforce, whether it's smallholder farmers, it's local entrepreneurs, it's teachers, into the conversation. So we have actually increased the number of people in the room and parties to about 5 now, which makes the process more messy, but it actually makes it more interesting. When you find the solutions, and we found this in the case of, I'll take a slight divergence in the case of smallholder farmers, the area that you work in, Heifer, as well, is when we find the solutions on co-creation, that, okay, now we have a model farmer who now is growing more and is figuring out how to get more. She, in turn, is now equipping and training somewhere between 50 to 100 other farmers. So now the co-creation models, not only on the funding side, got multiplied because the local banks are doing the credit extension. Our ability to access more customers, more clients gets magnified because now you have a local instructor. The third angle on the co-creation, which I don't think is a final chapter, but is the next chapter for us, is how do you now get this whole process powered up with technology? And that itself, I think, might change the power dynamics because now the technology provider comes into the conversation. So how do you rope them into this mix becomes the question for us. So I think those are some of the things, but end of the day, if you start with the 2 ends being very clear, And you only agree to do the co-creation when those are clear and agreed on. What are our motives and plans, and what is it that the funder is looking for? Those shouldn't change. And then really the intentional part is the power dynamics has to very intentionally shift to where the client is first and center.
And let me ask super quick question to both of you. When we talk about those non-negotiables, do you set out a charter at the beginning to say, here's where we're going to make sure we're in agreement, here's where you get to make decisions, here's where we get to make decisions, here's where the client comes in? Or is it more you kind of come to those along the way?
I'll speak for us. I think it's more organic. And the reason it's more organic is because the situation is dynamic. We're trying to help young people get jobs. And they're coming out of rural areas. They're coming out of schools. So it's a little bit more dynamic and organic as a result. And it's about building trust. I want to just also add, right, in the issue of co-creation, if something doesn't work, you can pivot. And because you've co-created, right, you can go back and they can come to you, you can go to them, you can problem solve together. I think that's one of the values of co-creation, because these things are never linear. And I would love to get 250,000 young people getting jobs, in 5 years, but I know that's not going to be like it's going to happen every year and these are the numbers. We're going to have to make some changes.
No, I would ditto everything there. Yeah, absolutely. Organic.
Organic.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get through two more questions, and Kristen's squeezing my time. I've got the timer. She just gave me the 2-minute mark. I'm like, no, we got 9. Anyway, so we'll squeeze. I'm going to ask 2 quick questions. First one, because I don't know about you all, but I like juicy panels. So let's get into the mess a little bit. Each one of you, what's a major challenge that you faced in a co-creation exercise? And what advice do you have for others who might face the same? Surita, you want to start?
Yeah, so, Atul actually talked about the relationship here with Simona. I think one of the things is we have a system where the relationship with the donor is often with a relationship manager. Mm-hmm. When you start to move that, right, into country, our country folks, right, aren't quite comfortable with actually those relationships. Know that from the beginning. Help build their capacity, help build their strength, right, to be able to have that equal conversation. And we started that, and we have amazing staff who understand, right, at the end of the day, what happens on the ground is more important than this relationship, say, in the US, in Toronto. And I think that, to me, started off as a challenge, but because we had such insightful colleagues who could see the end, we were able to build a capacity, and now our staff in Uganda, the relationship is with them completely. They're telling us, right, what they need from us to help them.
I'll go back to my car metaphor, car manufacturing, is that in the process of co-creation, where we've had challenges is when, in this case, the funder is saying, well, let's design the new car together. But what the funder really wants when you get into the nitty-gritty is for us to customize the car that they've already built. Mm-hmm. Right? And largely, I mean, you didn't you might get to that question, but that is the difference, I believe, between another buzzword in our industry, in humanitarian development, stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is the 20% customization of a standard design. Mm-hmm. Co-creation is 100% design. Mm-hmm. If you hold those two things in mind, and that's where we've had challenges. So, I literally had I won't give the names, but in a boardroom of a major U.S. corporation, and we were going through this whole, co-creation and so on, and the head of the foundation turned to the gentleman who was going to be leading the project sitting next to him. Simona was in the room with me that day. And she said, well, so-and-so, you have found your general contractor, quote, unquote. Huh. That wasn't a co-creation. It was clear what our role was. So those are, so all that I'm saying is at that point, we as the nonprofit, you have to decide whether you want to do it. It's not good or bad. It's just different. Are you going to customize a standardized car? Are you going to be the general contractor? Are you going to be the co-creation? Those, contexts and situations differ, and I know you will each want to, we do, and we make the right decisions for the time. So, but you have to then walk into it with our eyes wide open, what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And don't confuse one for the other. And then you will do well at that, because you walked into it with our eyes wide open.
I love that. I think it's so important to be clear about what we're talking about. And there is a distinct difference. Okay, final question. Because we've been talking about this, and I think you guys have already made a case for co-creation and why it's important, but changing the way we do things is tough, right? And so as you speak to this room full of peers, what is your pitch to them for why the co-creative process is worth the mess, is worth the pain, right? And why, as a nonprofit leader, should you be pushing for it, or as a funder, should you be trying to shift your organization toward it?
Yeah, I guess, it's a means to an end, right? And what's the end goal for us? We're trying to get youth to get jobs in very complex situations. And I think we don't have a choice. I feel like it's not a choice issue. I think, you talk about stakeholder engagement. I think stakeholder engagement could be rich if you use co-creation as the methodology by which you actually engage with stakeholders and actually figure out what it is that they want, right, and what you're delivering. So for us, it's not a choice issue because we get to the deliverables that we want, we get to the impact that we want, and ultimately the communities that we're supporting feel like they're getting what they want as well, and they're in partnership with us.
It's easy. You should just do it.
Yeah, I mean, just do it. I feel like you don't have a choice when you're dealing with complex issues. We're not trying to build a car, right? It's not. This is really complex issues, and so co-creation is critical. And understanding and listening and learning from pivoting from failure is really important, and that gives you the opportunity to do that.
What I would say on the co-creation, and we've had an opportunity, a couple of efforts going on, both co-creation and localization, extreme localization and, if you will, radical co-creation. And now, I'd say innovation on the next side. Is what we have found is, directly as a result of some of these things working over the last about now 5 years, we used to get, for every $100,000, we would put about $500,000 of loan capital out into the marketplace. That has now doubled to a minimum of 10:1. So we've gone from our leverage from 5:1 to 10:1. In some cases, we're getting as high as 15 to 20:1, and that is a direct result. So we are now, literally putting out 2 to 3 times the more resources being released into the marketplace. With co-creation with our clients and now with these local master trainers, our people leverage, and these are solutions that came out working with our clients and local people. We didn't design any of this sitting in our offices in Chicago or Visa's offices. Our people leverage has gone from one trainer of ours training 25 clients to a local master trainer training 100 clients. So 4 times the people leverage. And now let's see what technology does next. And when we look back and say, all right, what's the impact? I mean, at the end of the day, are people increasing income? Are they living better? So on those, if you will, high-level metrics, what we now have, and I'll give you the numbers, is 93%. This is data from last year's impact study. 93% of our clients report improved quality of life. 86% have increased income. So when you look at those numbers and you look at what we have done, I'd say it's well worth it, and go try it.
You heard it here, folks. When you use co-creation, your relationships are deeper, your impact is greater, and your business model is stronger. All right, and we have 1 minute to go. So
We're good.
Put it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you all. That was so good and inspiring. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Atul. Thank you, Surita. If you were here last year at the Global Washington Conference, we talked, the whole conference is about co-creation. And this was the perfect follow-on. I think it was Katie Young from Starbucks that said, if you came away from a co-creation experience happy and it went smoothly and everyone got what they want, you did it wrong, right? And so those were great examples and to show that it's worth it. So important. Thank you.